Welcome to the Writerpreneur podcast, where we teach nonfiction writers how to build a business around their writing. If you're new to the show, we break down every episode the same way that you break down every business. It goes into 3 steps. Find your audience, step 1. Step 2, build a community. Step 3, get paid. Today's episode will be very applicable if you are in step 1, looking to find your audience. I sent out an email to the list a couple days ago, and I said, hey, everything you do before you get started is distraction. Everything you do, you're just procrastinating. You don't need a logo. You don't need a brand name. You don't need fancy website. You don't need testimonials. You don't need a business plan. All you need to do is get started. And this sparked a lot of controversy. I got a lot of you guys. Thank you so much for your replies. I have replied to every single one of you guys, and I will continue to do it because that is my commitment to each of you. But I got a lot of replies. A lot of you guys said, great, that sounds awesome. But what is that next step? I had coaches, life coaches. I had trauma healing coaches. I had consultants, business consultants in every form of business. I had writers reaching out to me saying, what is that next step? And so instead of going incredibly deep for every single person, I did reply, and I'm also going to send each of you this. And anyone listening to this on the podcast, you're welcome. We're going to go very deep into what does get started look like. What does that next step or that first step actually look like? What's the practical, tactical takeaways that you can have to say, this is how you get started? So here we go. First, before you do anything else, you have to have some form of credibility or some form of authority. I tend to lose a lot of people here, and so I'm going to introduce this right at the beginning. There's no way to get around this. I do not help people scam other people. I'm not going to help you build an audience so that you can help someone else do something you've never done. That is the definition of a scam. I refuse to help people doing that. So number 1, you have to have achieved the result either for others or for yourself, ideally for yourself. That's step 1. Now, let's look at what you're actually doing. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pick a person. Now, if you have an idea, okay, I've achieved this really cool result. What am I going to do? Who am I going to help? You should have an idea. If you've achieved the result, you're probably helping people who are similar to you before you achieve the result, right? It's really straightforward. It should be really simple. If you've helped other people get a specific result, your goal then is to help more people like that, right? It's pretty straightforward. First, define that person. Now, I get a lot of kickback here, and most people say, okay, yeah, but my product can help so many people. Yes, I can help you. I can do email marketing. I can do it for YouTubers, but I can also do it for people on Instagram and TikTok, and I can do it if you're a small business or if you're a local business. And yes, you can offer that same service to everyone can benefit from that service, but no, you can't offer that same service to everyone, at least not in the marketing copy. Our goal here is to find a person and then also a problem, which we'll get into in a second, for one very specific reason. It's not because that is the total of who you will serve. That's not why we're doing this. We're doing this so that that person who's experiencing this problem will resonate with the content that you create. If you say, I offer email services, I will run email for you and increase your email signups as well as your click-through rate. Sign up here. Most people need that. Most businesses need that. But your opt-in rate, people who say, oh, that resonates with me, that's me, probably not. It's going to be very small. It's going to be a very small percentage. Most people see that and be like, okay, yeah, just another person offering an email service. But if you say, I had an email chat, or I had a YouTube channel, and I grew it to 50,000 subscribers, and then YouTube shut me down, and I had to start all over again. And this time I'm now building up an email list because I realized relying on YouTube for my audience was incredibly risky. I can get taken down in an instant, and that's what happened. So I now help YouTubers build their email list. But now that I've also been doing this myself, I will also help you increase your click-through rate because I have learned email because I've been forced to do it over the last 6 months. If I am a YouTuber and I hear that story, that is a very different story. You're offering the same service. I'll build your email list. I will engage and increase your click-through rate. I'll engage the list for you. You're doing the exact same service, but you're now just targeting it to a very specific person. So now that person will, when they hear that message, they say, oh, you're telling my story. I was there. I am there. Oh my God, that's my story. You understand, you know what this is like. I can trust you with my time, with my attention, with my money here, and then they can take that next step. That is the goal. We don't define a person and a problem because that's the only person a problem will serve. We define a person and a problem because that's the marketing copy and the content that we want to create. We want it to deeply resonate with a person or with whoever is reading it. That's why we define a person and the problem. So I'm jumping into step 2 already, which is define the problem. But these all are interconnected. You have your experience, your credibility, you have the person that you're serving, then you have the problem that they're solving. All 3 of those should be very interconnected. Your experience solving this problem for this person, these all should be interconnected. Now, if you are, and the reason why we want to do this is because after we go to the final step, which is create content, if you create content and the content doesn't resonate, what do? Instead of throwing your hands up in the air and say, okay, I can't build an audience, this market is too saturated, I don't know what to do. Instead, what you want to do is have very clear next steps. You want to have some sort of system in front of you that says, cool, this content that I'm creating isn't resonating. So it's one of these reasons. And that's why we're approaching it this way. So what are those reasons? Those reasons are, 1, do you have credibility? Do people actually believe that you can give them and get them the result that you say you can? Do you have some sort of credibility here? 2, can the person relate to you? Does the person actually understand? Can they actually relate and connect to you? When you say, if you are serving YouTubers and yet all your content is about short form, YouTubers will look at it and say, okay, this doesn't really apply to me. This isn't really my game. Or if all your content is about written word and yet you're trying to target YouTubers, again, all of these YouTubers will look at it and say, it's not really for me. You're not resonating with the person, right? Now, then we have the problem. Is the problem big enough? Assuming you have solid credibility and assuming that the person, these are the checklists to go through, you have solid credibility, then the person is, you can relate to the person, they connect with you, you understand them, you use language and words and things out in the culture that you reference that they understand and they relate to. Then we go to the problem. Is the problem strong enough? Is this a burning problem for them? Most often, if your content isn't taking off, this is, ironically, the problem is the problem. It's just not a big enough problem that you're trying to solve. At least not for that person. At least not for that person in this moment. So if that's the case, what you can do is either try and solve this same problem for someone else. Instead of starting to solve it for YouTubers, you can still try and solve the same problem, but go for maybe small business owners, maybe brick and mortar stores, right? Maybe for Instagram, for people who have Instagram accounts. You can go solve the same problem but for a different person. Or if you love the person, if you're like, I really want to serve YouTubers, then great. Solve a different problem for that person. If that person relates to you and understands you, but they're not, they're engaging with clicks and likes, but they're not actually clicking through to your service, then the problem just isn't strong enough for them. They just don't care enough about the problem. So interview them. Get on calls with them. Do whatever you can to track them down and get a feel for what are the actual problems that they're experiencing. What keeps them awake at night? What does it emotionally feel like to go through these problems? More often than not, That is the issue. That's why content tends not to gain traction, is because people don't have that problem part down. And then we have the final thing here, which is the execution of the content. So before I go deep into that, let's do a quick review. First thing, if you're getting started, step one is you have to have some sort of credibility or authority. You have to have some sort of reason that people will trust you. Step two, you've identified a person. Step three, you've identified a problem that person experiences. And all three of these are tied together. Your credibility, the person that you're serving, and the problem that you're helping that person solve. All three of those are interconnected. Boom. Now we move on to content execution. Now we just create content. That's the goal here. Just create content. Create content around their pain points, around their problems, around their desires, around what they want. You understand, again, you should understand this person really well at this point. So start creating content for them. Call them out specifically. This type of person. Hey, YouTubers, here's what's up. Here's my story. This story I told earlier. That's a very powerful story. Start telling your story, how you've gained your credibility and how you can serve them, how you can help them. The goal here is to show that you understand them. You have empathy. You understand who they are, where they are, what it's like to do what they're doing. And you also have authority. You can help solve the problems that they're experiencing. You want to communicate both of those in your content. Now, if you've created 15 or 20 pieces of content and none of it has gained traction, you have 0 signups, there's none that are outliers, all of it tends to be pretty low engagement, low reach, then the final part here, the final audit, you could say, is my content execution on point? Is my content execution on point? So again, we have the credibility. That's the first thing you want to audit. Do I have credibility? And am I communicating this in a way that people will understand and believe? Step two, can I connect and relate to the person? Am I using cultural references that they understand and relate to? Am I using the language that they use? Did I create this video or write this article in a way that they resonate with? You write, and imagine a YouTube video that is made for women between 55 and 65 years old versus one that's made for 18-year-old men. It's going to be very different visually. It's going to be very different pacing. It's going to be very different tempo. It's going to be very different in the language and the tenor. A lot of things are going to be very different about how you're communicating. You could have the exact same message, but how you're presenting it is going to be wildly different, right? Are you presenting your content in a way that resonates with your audience? Assuming the first two are right, then we go into the third, which is the problem. Is this problem a genuine burning problem for this person? If it's not, then change the problem or keep the problem and change the person. That's the steps. Okay, there's the first three. Then we go on to the final one, which is the content. Is the content good? Are you executing well on content? Now, let's do an audit here. Let's show you what this would look like. If you are not executing well on content, you can break this down. What you want to do is look at content and say, what are the validated pieces of content that I can model? What are the viral validated pieces of content that I can model? So how you'll do this is you'll go to other people, other creators who serve the same person, solve the same problem for that person. Look at the content that they make that is outliers. Look at the content that they make that gets really high engagement, really strong reach. Now, use that content as a model. You know, something about that content resonated with your audience. Why? Because they have your audience. You guys serve the same person. You guys are solving the same problem for the same person, and yet their content is doing well and yours isn't. So let's look at the execution of content. Let's look at what this would actually look like. So if their content is doing well, you look at their outliers, the 3 to 5 pieces of content that really took off, then say, great. Of those 3 to 5 pieces, let's model that. So you want to look at the individual components that make up a single piece of content. These components are the same regardless of the platform, regardless of the type of content. Whether you're writing on Medium, whether you're writing on Substack, whether you're tweeting, whether you are, or Xing, I guess, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're in TikTok, Snapchat, it doesn't matter the platform. The same components will make up every single piece of content. So first, you have the package. How is it packaged? Go to that platform, whatever platform they're on, and scroll through. What are the first few things you see? You'll see, usually, in general, you'll see a thumbnail and you'll see the caption, at least the first top of it. Sometimes this is a headline. This is a sub-headline in a thumbnail. Depending on the platform, it'll be a little different. But the idea is, how is the piece of content packaged? How is it wrapped up? That is what you want to ask yourself. That's what you want to figure out. There's one component of content. The second component is the big idea. What's the insight? What's the takeaway? What makes this piece of content unique as opposed to any other piece of content that anyone could have created, right? What makes this piece of content unique? What's that insight or that takeaway? That's the big idea. Then you want to look at the hook. What's the first, if it's written content, what's the first 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences? If it is a video content, what's the first couple seconds of that video? If it's audio, what's the first couple seconds of that audio? What is the hook? What captures the attention? If the piece of content did well, you know that the combination of the big idea, the package, and the hook all resonated with the audience. There's one other one that I want to touch on here, which is also structure, and this becomes pacing. This is, if it's video content, how fast do they go from image 1 to image 2, or clip 1 to clip 2? Where are the cuts? How fast is the pacing? Are they throwing text up left and right and graphics and transitions? Are they speaking fast like this? Or is everything a bit slower? Is everything more deliberate on each and every step? 2 very different structures for the same piece of content. So you want to audit what is the package, what's the big idea, what's the hook to capture people's attention and keep them, and then what's the structure or format of that content. If this is written content, the structure or format of this could be whether it's bullet pointed, whether it's a case study, whether it is a high statistical analysis, whether it is has lots of small headings. Any of these they're just different types of formats, which all have to do with the structure of the content. You also have pacing. How fast are they speaking, or how long are the sentences versus how short they are? You have flow. How punchy are the sentences? Do they have this big, long paragraph where it's uninterrupted text or uninterrupted talking, followed by a, yeah, bam, that's it, followed by a short, punchy sentence? What's the pacing? All of these things are different pieces that make up the structure. So if you're looking to get started, look at your credibility. Where do you have credibility? Where do you have authority? Then define a person and a problem that's related to what you can solve, to the credibility that you have. Be very clear on the person and the problem, and then start creating content. If your content doesn't work, then you know if it doesn't gain traction, you know it was one of these 4 things. You know either you don't have the credibility you think you do, or it's unbelievable and people just don't believe it. You don't relate to the person, or you don't relate to the problem. Either the problem's just not big enough for that person. If that's the case, you can change any one of those, or you can work to build credibility. Then if all of that is not the case, if you do have the credibility, people do believe you, you do relate to the person, and the problem is very real and painful, immediate for that person, then you look at content. Is my execution right? And this is where you look at other creators in this space, and you look at their viral content. You follow the viral validated method to understand, did my content, or what content has been viral viral validated? What content resonates with this audience? If you get any value from this at all and you want to go deeper into these topics, feel free to reach out. Go to GabrielKlingman.com. That's GabrielKlingman.com and sign up for my newsletter. I respond to every person who replies to any of my newsletters. So if you have any questions, this was originally, the idea came from a newsletter and I just expanded it here. So if you have any questions on this, leave a comment here, join my newsletter, reply, you will get a response. Looking forward to hearing from you.